Disturbing new details are emerging about the assassination of our dear friend Charlie Kirk yesterday at Utah Valley University. Blaze News The Mandate starts right now. Welcome in, everyone. I'm Jill Savage, joined by Matthew Peterson.
Yes, I would say it's good to be here, but there's a lot of unpleasant things that must be discussed today.
And Chris Bedford, as always, joining us. And Chris, it's a little bit later. We've had a little bit more time to process this, but it's still very difficult today.
Yeah, in the morning it's the same thing. Nothing's better.
Yeah. When we look at this, though, 24 years ago on 9/11, the world changed forever as America was shaken to its core. And yesterday, it changed once more with the shocking assassination of Charlie Kirk, who's a leader whose voice and courage defined a new generation of resistance. President Trump addressed the country last night.
It's a long past time for all Americans and the media to confront the fact that violence and murder are the tragic consequence of demonizing those with whom you disagree day after day, year after year, in the most hateful and despicable way possible. For years, those on the radical left have compared wonderful Americans like Charlie to Nazis and the world's worst mass murderers and criminals. This kind of rhetoric is directly responsible for the terrorism that we're seeing in our country today, and it must stop right now. My administration will find each and every one of those who contributed to this atrocity and to other political violence, including the organizations that fund it and support it, as well as those who go after our judges, law enforcement officials, and everyone else who brings order to our country. From the attack on my life in Butler, Pennsylvania last year, which killed a husband and father, to the attacks on ICE agents, to the vicious murder of a healthcare executive in the streets of New York, to the shooting of House Majority Leader Steve Scalise and 3 others, radical left political violence has hurt too many innocent people and taken too many lives.
We have seen the outpouring of love and just the people that cared about Charlie Kirk, Matt. It has been just impactful to see. We talked a little bit about the leftists yesterday, and we will again today in the demons that are out there on social media. But on the other side, there are so many people. There's such an outpouring of love that we have seen for Charlie.
Yeah, there's a rare thing that happens in the wake of death sometimes with people who lived incredible lives. And it's sort of an outpouring of not only love for Charlie, but all these stories about who he is and what he accomplished and how he impacted their lives. And that will continue, over the course of coming days, because this is someone who dedicated his life to public service of a kind, and he directly impacted the lives of millions of people. And so those stories, keep those coming because they are very positive and they're very inspiring. And the kind of inspiration that people are taking from his life now is truly incredible. And we're going to see more of that in the days to come.
Yeah, and we see the young men, the Gen Z generation, they have become more Republican in large part due to what Charlie was able to go out there and do with Turning Point USA. And we see that from 2023, the Gen Z generation, the men for that, were Democrat plus 26. You go ahead to 2025, and it's Republican plus 18. And Chris, I think that is just absolutely impactful when you look at what Charlie and his mission were able to do. And it's not just political, but he was able to have such a political impact. And honestly, that's one of the reasons why they absolutely hated him.
Effective. He was an important person in a tidal wave. Now, this was a group effort. This was a cultural shift. He started this in 2012, ran youth outreach for Donald Trump in 2016. They didn't do too well. Ran it again in 2020. They didn't do too well. But between 2020 and 2024, with COVID, with the clampdown on comedians, with the attacks on being a white male, with the attacks on basic social structures like the police, or fun ones like fraternities, with the attacks on toxic masculinity and any kind of showing of masculinity really at all, with the undermining of the American system and like this the old open-faced, bald-faced openness about what they actually think about us and believe, which by the way back when I first went to college, they expressed privately in classrooms. You just rarely saw it ever said in public. Turning Point, through its years of work, was well positioned to take advantage of that. So it was well positioned to take advantage of a period of time where you had black boys in pastels who weren't going to let you burn the American flag. When Tucker Carlson was a rock star, where Donald Trump in a McDonald's outfit with a monster truck, and the next day was a cultural figure, where Shane Gillis was making fun of people, where even Democrats like Dave Chappelle were teasing the heck out of their own party. They were able to capitalize that and offer something cool and offer some organization and offer some outreach and offer resources to what was a cultural shift going on amongst the American youth and a rebellion against what being told what to do. And Charlie was at the forefront of that. He wasn't just back at the office. The reason why he was shot is he wasn't indoors at these little events that I've been to, I've spoken to. My wife's speaking at a university in a few weeks, hopefully. These indoor events where there's debate panels, where there's clubs invite you. He would hold these mass events where people got to come and see and ask questions, and open mic. And it's just he rode that wave so perfectly. That's all.
We look at the love and outreach that Charlie is receiving, and it is really just taking you aback when you see the President of the United States this morning. Let's go ahead and watch him as he's going to say that Charlie is going to receive the Medal of Freedom. But you just see Donald Trump and the emotion that is there on his face.
Charlie was a giant of his generation, a champion of liberty, and an inspiration to millions and millions of people. We miss him greatly, yet I have no doubt that Charlie's voice and the courage he put into the hearts of countless people, especially young people, will live on. I'm pleased to announce that I will soon be awarding Charlie Kirk posthumously the Presidential Medal of Freedom. The date of the ceremony will be announced, and I can only guarantee you one thing, that we will have a very big crowd.
And you just look at this, and you have everybody from the President of the United States to just, teenage boys, as Clay Travis wrote on his social media account earlier today, that his two oldest sons wore coats and ties to school today, something they normally hate to do today in honor of Charlie Kirk. The entire school is doing it. I'm not sure that people realize even yet how much he connected with young boys, young men, and how crushed these kids are. Charlie had a unique ability to get that from the President of the United States all the way down to just teenage boys going to school, Matt. And that is such an incredible thing when we're looking at what he is able, the legacy that he's able to leave behind here.
Yeah, I mean, I should probably learn something from those boys and put a tie on every once in a while. I think that what you say is right, and the Clay Travis thing is particularly striking because, here you have a sort of organic, protest. It's not really a protest. It's a sign of respect. They're trying to honor, Charlie by wearing the suits and ties. That's real. That's a real connection with so many of these young men. And as you say, these are people who are already politically engaged. There is a cultural shift going on, as Chris mentioned, and he was pushing that forward. He was the tip of the spear for that. He was the resource for so many people, as Chris said, for that. And now, you can see this outcry from all these important people because Charlie was at the top of echelon of American politics, the entire Trump family, the top people in the White House, consulted him. He guided people. They all loved him for good reason. They saw him for what he was, incredible guy who was incredibly talented and mission driven. But you have this entire generation of young men, especially now, of young people who are, feel leaderless and also feel as if, they understand something very dark about American politics and culture right now. And I think that they're not going to forget this. They're not going to forget, yesterday. It's going to be with them the rest of their lives. And you could say that, people are saying, they're radicalized, and in a split second, they were all radicalized. That's really a bad word for it. What really happened is they see truly the actual landscape of political and cultural reality in America. And I think they see that without the baggage of the past, without the benefit of the past, without the baggage of the past, which was, things didn't have to be this way. Well, this is how they are. And this is what they see very clearly. And what they do with that is going to dictate a lot of American politics moving forward.
And what a lot of people in the country are going to want to see now is justice. They are still looking for a man. The Salt Lake City FBI had put out an image of a man that they were looking for. And Bo Mason is the commissioner for the Utah Deputy Department of Public Safety. And he's saying that we have tracked the movements on campus, up the stairwell, up the roof, across the roof to the shooting location. And after that, we were able to track his movements as he went to the other side of the building, jumped off the building, and fled out into the neighborhood from campus. And Chris, one of the things that we're still looking at right now is there's a Wall Street Journal headline that was saying that ammunition was engraved with transgender images on them in writings. Now, this is something that we should still be a little bit skeptical about, because we know that in the days and hours after events like this, that somebody else could have put this out there quickly and in place for the police to go find. But when we look at this, there's still so many things that we still don't know. But I know that everybody is praying out there that this man, whoever this is brought to justice quickly.
Yeah, we're going to need answers on this one. We can't have what happened with President Trump's attempted assassination in Butler, where it's a bunch of people saying, "Oh, don't worry, no, there's no politics, there's no blog, there's no history, there's no internet browsing history. Yeah, there's some strange travel that independent people were able to figure out." We talked about that in the show. But just move on. Or Las Vegas, where it's, "Oh, maybe he just had a psychotic break. We'll never know." That's not going to suffice here. Not at all. Especially with the similarities to Butler. A young-looking person taking such a demented shot. This is that is not going to satisfy. But I also hope that Americans aren't just satisfied when he is caught, which I think he probably will be. The early indications that this was some kind of mastermind don't seem to be bearing out. The idea that this shot was taken with an older rifle by someone who probably aiming for center mass, not the throat. It's not a SEAL Team 6 hit. This is an assassination on a day without wind. Our early looks into that guy who was arrested here at Blaze, the first suspect, and the possibility that he was trying to intentionally distract police. Turns out he's a well-known gadfly who shows up at all kinds of events, but is like a gadfly, harmless. He was yelling, "Shoot me, shoot me," for attention or for whatever. It's not looking like this is some kind of international bond caper, so he's going to get caught. And I hope he gets caught alive. But after that, I hope that Americans don't just say, "Well, the perpetrator's been arrested, we'll have a trial," or he's killed himself, hopefully not. And the funeral's happened, and now we move on. That cannot be the case. And the fact that the Senate right now, in such classic Senate form, is largely just looking at nominations. And like, all right, now's the time to move forward in nominations. Yeah, sure it is. But so was earlier this week, and so was before the August recess, and so will next week. We need action. It doesn't matter if you don't have the votes. Force the votes. Push the votes. Make the votes happen. I want to look at these schools and these universities. I want to look at these professors. I want the administration to look at these schools and universities outside of just Harvard and say, "Do you have professors who are publicly posting in sympathy with this murder on a college campus? If so, your funding is cut dry until that person's let go." Things like that. I want repercussions for the spread of toxic, violent rhetoric all over this country.
Yeah, exactly. And we should say, I mean, so what you're saying, I mean, to sum up is, when you look at this now, it does not look like a coordinated attack with anyone else. This is pretty well. People can go to the Blaze and read this article. I mean, this guy was not running interference. This guy was kind of loony, and does not seem to be connected to any kind of attack. And then when it comes to the trans stuff that's been reported, today, we should say there's good reason, Chris, right, to doubt this. It's not clear. It's not completely verified. It's certainly not by Blaze Media. And of course, our worry is a lot of times people want to jump to conclusions in these moments and go down rabbit holes, and people are doing that all over the place. But there is a lot of confidence, I think, in this case that they will get to the bottom of this and they will discover who did it. And, we certainly will be here holding the administration accountable and rooting them on.
Well, I want to thank you for watching and listening to this show. And Blaze TV exists because people like you refuse to settle for watered down coverage and endless spin. And this has never been about one voice or one company. It's about a movement of people who refuse to sit on the sidelines. And we need to carry this mission forward. When you subscribe, you're not just supporting a show, you're making sure that the truth has a platform today and for the next generation. Join Blaze TV today at blazetv.com/BNT and get $20 off right now. That's as low as $8 a month with the annual plan, and you can be a part of shaping the future. It's blazetv.com/BNT. Well, there was a time where unity was greatly needed yesterday, and House Democrats wouldn't even allow for a moment of silence for Charlie Kirk. Take a look.
What purpose does the gentlelady from Colorado rise? Let's wait a minute. The House will be in order. The House will be in order. Shh. The House will be in order.
That was Representative Lauren Boebert making that request. And the Democrats couldn't even give Charlie a moment of silence. I want to follow up a little bit more with what we had on yesterday, where we talked about MSNBC, Matthew Dowd. They have now fired him, thankfully. It looks like there is actual action steps being taken now where people are actually being fired as they should. Dowd yesterday was going on MSNBC saying, oh, it was a possible celebration and the gun just went off. Like, this is what the MAGA people do. And I can tell you now that the Carolina Panthers have fired one of their employees. The director of communications was posting stuff online. Phoenix Suns writer was fired over these posts that he was putting out there online. A lot of teachers, a lot of people in the healthcare industry. Matt, there are so many different people that are actually being fired today, which it's about time. This has needed to happen for quite some time. You can't just go out there and cheer for the death of Charlie Kirk was a very regular, normal person who was just going out there trying to talk to college kids about the other side of the aisle, that he had different political views than them. And you know what? At least now people are actually stepping up to the plate and firing them.
Yeah, I mean, I will say I've been heartened by this because this is something that our side has been terrible at. We don't really react or do anything in response to many of these terrible incidents that have occurred over the last 10 years because, let's face it, people on the right are living their life. They're not activists. But what you see now is real anger and accountability, and I'm a fan. I'm a fan of that. I think people should be held accountable for their words, and in this case, what comes around goes around, and you see a lot of people who are just saying, no, not this time. And you see a lot of businesses and employers, frankly, saying, I don't want any part of this. And that, it's been a day, right? But that is a change, at least initially, it looks like one.
And if you are on the Blue Sky app, Chris, there are a ton of crazies over there. I am not on there, but they are basically saying who's next. For all of this, some of the names that are out there is J.K. Rowling, Matt Walsh, Ben Shapiro lives at TikTok, Elon Musk. So there is no shortage of crazies that are out there. And unfortunately, this is what we will continue to have to deal with.
Yeah, because if Charlie Kirk is someone who you need to shoot because you don't like that he's coming to debate you, then there's so many more people who just weren't there that day or whose name you maybe didn't know. I mean, that's the only difference. That's the only reason he was targeted. He didn't do anything. I mean, he was effective, and he was there, and he said things I didn't like. There are a lot of people who do that. I mean, a good friend of mine, I was in his wedding, has been told that by him and his wife that they need to move because their security can't be guaranteed in their nice family neighborhood they live in. in Florida, by the way, that that people basically need to come into the compound like it's the Godfather, because they're at war. The threats are real. The copycats are going to happen. And I wrote in my Beltway brief today that this really is a point where we can decide that we're going to get better, or we can decide that we're going to get much worse, much more quickly. And it's going to take a serious turn by society, a serious rejection by the American left, by the universities, not just these businesses and these sports teams, but by the university system of this kind of crap, in order for that to actually have any kind of impact. When you go out there and say a 31-year-old father and husband and debater needs to be murdered for his words, not for the power, not even for the power he wields, not even for the authority he has, not even for the way he spends his money. It's for the words he said that you disagreed with, that he was willing to talk to you about. You could have gotten in line and debated him. When you say that he needs to be executed for that, it's exactly what Jay Leno said. It's a full-on assault, murderous assault on the First Amendment. Anyone who preaches that ought not to be welcomed in the halls of power. Hey, look, I'm not saying like they do on the American left. Oh, you can't even be a pizza delivery boy. But hey, geez, get the heck out of here. Why are you teaching students? Why do you have access to children? There needs to be significantly more accountability than there is right now, and funds need to be taken. And all these nonprofits that for the last 5 years have spent time funneling money towards bail funds for rioters, towards printing T-shirts that have guns on them with the trans flag that says defend it, and kill people who try to deny your personhood as if not using their pronouns is worthy of being murdered, or all these people who fund groups that are professional agitators. Well, those funds need to be seized and those boards of directors need to be investigated. These are crimes. You don't need to make new crimes. You don't need to revoke civil rights. You don't need to attack civil liberties. You just need to enforce the laws in the books, like we've seen in Washington, D.C. this past month. Like you've seen, hopefully someday we'll see in Chicago, like you're going to see in more cities, hopefully soon. You just need to enforce the laws on the books and say, no, you can't be doing this illegal stuff that you've gotten away with for years because it leads to violence.
Well, the brief, the article that you wrote is called "Why Charlie Kirk's Assassination Will Change Us in Ways This Generation Has Never Seen." I encourage people to go to blazemedia.com and check it out.
Yeah, everybody needs to read that. It's great work, Chris, and I'm just glad that we have all made it through without shedding some tears today. It's going to be a tough uphill road, and we will figure out what those next steps are, but that's going to take a few weeks to get out of this. So we appreciate your time.
See you tomorrow.
Don't go anywhere. When we come back, we'll have Mike Howell join us right after this. Well, we spend a lot of time talking about politics and the culture. There's a lot of noise and craziness out there, but this is different. So if you're a woman or there's a woman in your life that you care about, you need to know about Share the Arrows. It's Allie Beth Stuckey's. It's second annual. It's happening October 11th right here in Dallas, Texas. But it's built to encourage and equip and have women speak to the truth and actually try and stand firm in today's world. So if you're really craving real encouragement and biblical truth, then this is for you. If you're a husband or dad or brother, and you know a woman in your life that needs this, listen up, because it's the culture right now. We know it's pulling us in the wrong direction, and this is a chance to reset and get grounded in the truth. All the tickets and details are at sharethearrows.com. That's sharethearrows.com. Well, yesterday's campus event with Charlie Kirk was supposed to spark discussion. Instead, it ended in his assassination. It was an act of violence that shocked the nation. Mike Howell is the president of the Oversight Project, and he joins us now to discuss what the FBI must do and what real justice looks like. Mike, thanks for joining us here. First, I want to just get your thoughts on what took place yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm extraordinarily heartbroken. Look, I'm equal parts sad and angry right now, but I guess I'm no part surprised. This has been a constant rise in domestic terrorism in this country. It's taken different forms over the years, but I think we all knew with the, scattered events that have seemed to get less scattered and more consistent, combined with the rhetoric and the anger in the air, that something like this was not only inevitable, but, to a certain degree probable. And I think that's awful in a country that depends on civic discourse and an informed citizenry, participating in a constitutional republic, that an assassin's bullet can end it. It's, we talk a lot about attacks on democracy in our public discourse, but assassination culture is probably the biggest attack on the ability of America to self-govern. And it breaks my heart to see, this country go through it. My heart breaks for Charlie Kirk's family. I mean, I'm a young dad, not as young as he was, but like, you can only imagine those poor little children and his wife. And so equal parts sad, but I'm very, very angry.
Yes, let's speak about how the anger right now should be channeled in many ways throughout this country to do something productive and establish justice first of all. So walk us through the task ahead of the FBI.
It's not easy, and the FBI, unfortunately, isn't an entity that I put a lot of trust in. I mean, the whole case for really a large part of Trump's accountability agenda was on taming the beast of the FBI and reforming it. And so that hasn't happened. There's been, cosmetic changes, and we're told that with new leadership, all is well and good, but we largely have the same FBI that, was used for such ill purposes during the Biden years. And so we have a massive mission set in front of us that needs to be accomplished with the FBI that really isn't any different. So that makes the task way, much more difficult. And what really needs to happen, and what should have happened years ago, and we've been calling for this continuously at the Oversight Project, is to do the most obvious thing and use the awesome powers that accompany being able to investigate domestic terrorism and label far left extremism and transgender ideology-inspired violence as domestic terrorism. What happened yesterday to Charlie Kirk was a domestic terrorist event. Don't take my word for it. Look at the statute defining domestic terrorism. It is violence meant for a political outcome to shape, grievances, political, racial, you name it, cultural. It was meant to shock and scare people. That is domestic terrorism. And so whether it's Charlie Kirk on that stage or innocent children in schools, or you name it, you get on the list of all these terrible crimes we've seen, that emanate from the same evil ideology. It's domestic terrorism, and it's going to be a big hurdle for the FBI is currently situated to label this as that, because it's going to stir the pot politically in this country. But it is what it is, and we're only going to solve it if we're honest about it. And the FBI cannot get even close to the finish line unless they avail themselves of the tools that come along with labeling it as domestic terrorism. And I look forward to them doing that in short order.
Yeah, and we know that the FBI has not been reformed yet, but what do you see as the biggest challenges ahead, and what should happen next? Just in terms of this investigation, what should people be on the look for?
Yeah, I think it looks like President Trump or AG Bondi or Director Patel going to a microphone and announcing a domestic terror, event and a threat that's continuing to persist throughout this country, and that the counterterrorism tools of the federal government would be deployed at that. We haven't crossed that Rubicon yet. I mean, people dance around it. There's rhetorical glancing shots at it, but it needs to be hit center mass and say, these continuing events are domestic terrorism. And after that, what you should see and you deserve to see basically are very similar to the January 6th investigations, really, which, they call domestic terrorism. You should see people being rounded up in this country who have supported these individuals and organizations, who have funded them, who have given aid and comfort or material support. And the reaches of this might make some people uncomfortable. It could hit politicians. It could hit corporation and entities that many of us, are familiar with, but who've crossed the line from just engaging in a political back and forth to cultivating this environment, which everybody knew would lead to violence. And so it looks like a lot of arrests. It looks like a lot of, pain politically, probably in the short term, because there are going to be a lot of people upset that this cherished class of, transgenderism is now as a component that has been identified by the federal government, and a component. That's an important part. The federal government's not saying transgenders, every single one of them is a domestic terrorist. They're saying that the ideology that tends to incite people to violence, when you tell transgender people that they will die if their gender isn't affirmed, or that other people are trying to kill them by not affirming their gender and things like that, that leads to people committing domestic terrorism, because that's what they've been brainwashed into, essentially. It's going to make people uncomfortable, and that moniker gets put on there. And so that's what I'm looking at. That's the only way to solve this.
Well, Mike, I mean, I wholeheartedly agree with you. As you know, I tweeted last night something along these lines, just big picture. The entire federal apparatus needs to turn around, most especially the FBI, dedicate resources to tracking down and preventing leftist violence in America. This has been left unchecked for a long time. In fact, it's been funded and supported by mainstream institutions, and it's now the true cause of our national unrest. But as I hear what you're saying, which I 100% agree with, the obstacle here, it strikes me, is really large, right? I mean, the obstacle is there are tens of thousands of people who would say that, who work in the federal government, in the very apparatus that we need to turn around, who would say, I absolutely disagree with everything Mike Howell said. And by the way, you're both extremists and you should be investigated. I mean, there are tens of thousands of people who would say, that is the most horrible thing I've ever heard. How could you say that about anyone who's trans or transgender ideology? You're just a right-wing extremist. Who work within the federal government, will work all throughout that apparatus, was the FBI or any of these other agencies. So, I mean, that's an enormous obstacle, no, to actually turning this thing around.
It's absolutely huge, and maybe you have to get creative in the short term. Maybe you have to lean into, state and local law enforcement that would not be obstructive of, the efforts. But I think it would also be an eye-opening moment. Like, we've been told by President Trump and, Kash Patel, the director of the FBI, that everything's good now with those agencies. And I think this would expose that not to be true very, very quickly. I mean, can you imagine having the agents that came up through, recent networks of being hired under DEI guidelines and who went after J6ers with every, ounce in their being, who went after Catholics, who are still going after Catholics, who went after parents at school board meetings, now being told that actually the terrorism that we're seeing is coming from the exact opposite area. It would be a mass dropping moment that the FBI, by and large, people in there still aren't really on the side of law and order. They have a political agenda, but that should not stop us from doing what needs to be done. Like, we cannot allow another Charlie Kirk to be assassinated, or another school to be shot up, or any of these other transgender ideology inspired, crimes. People will die unless we do something. And so whether it's using resources outside of the FBI in the interim, we just got to do it and let the chips fall where they may, because the alternative is, not tolerable.
Now, I do want to point out, I mean, the first steps from the FBI yesterday, this wasn't a good look. I mean, we had apparently the suspect in custody. I think it was 5:21 p.m. yesterday, and then just over 90 minutes later, 6:59 p.m., we get, no, this person has been released. I mean, there's no one at Blaze who has any, ill will towards Kash Patel. Everyone here wants to see him succeed and the FBI succeed. But we're going to have to see more in the next 24 hours in the coming days, because that was, that was remarkable. And we need to be honest, that wasn't a good moment yesterday.
Yeah, it was awful. And look, mistakes happen, but when you see a mistake made for the same reason that, a lot of other mistakes were made, it makes you scratch your head and wonder why this pattern is persisting. And the mistake here is this over eagerness for communications and public relations, which, seems to have followed from the influencer life into the director life, when it's a fundamentally different job. And so you can see how somebody who wants to be out in front, wants to be on camera, wants to be delivering, and maybe for good reasons, is tempted to get, not check things as much as they should be. I've seen it happen a million times. But in an issue as big as this one, that was a colossal mistake, which just tends to confirm some of the criticisms that have been coming in and have been sustained from president, company included. With me, I have long maintained, and this is irrespective of Kash, that the FBI is a fundamentally broken place. And even since Director Patel has been there, I don't think he's done enough to fix it. But here's the silver lining. He has a chance now to really prove his critics wrong. This is the test. And I think we'll know the answer to whether he's up to meeting it within the next days, or, even a week or so at maximum. And it depends on designating this as a domestic terror event in the larger pattern. If Director Patel is willing to cross that Rubicon and do what needs to be done, I think it'll shut a lot of the critics, myself included, up for a little bit. But up until then, it's just another series of, kind of stepping on the rake. And it's just unfortunate. We need to do better.
Well, I saw something on X last night from friend of the show, J. Michael Waller, and I wanted to point this out. He said the State Department wants the public help in identifying foreigners in the U.S. Who had social media posts who were cheering on the assassination of Charlie Kirk. It's going to pull their visas, and he had quote tweeted the Deputy Secretary of State, Chris Landau. That is good news right here. I mean, the fact that there are some action steps, I would say we want a lot more, but I do think this is a good first step, Mike.
Yeah, I do too. Landau is an absolute American patriot. He's a longtime advocate for the causes we care about so much here on The Mandate. I've known him personally for some time. He means it. He really does mean it. And for the number two over at State to step out in that way, I think is also meaningful to see that out of our political leadership. Luckily for him, there are a lot of foreigners who have said, just absolutely terrible things, along with a lot of Americans who have as well. And citizens are so outraged by this. They're just scraping all this. You're seeing X accounts just fill up, in the last 24 hours, screen capping everything they possibly can, coming from these networks. And so not only will that be helpful for the visa revocation of these foreigners, but it's also going to be helpful for what needs to happen next in terms of identifying and mapping the supporters of the domestic terror movement here in the United States. And so if you're watching, you see something, you say something and get it to the right place. If you don't know where to take it, send it to me. I'll get it to the right place. And so props to Landau for stepping up.
Yeah, and props to all the patriots last night who were going out and saving all the TikToks, all the X posts. If you ventured into Blue Sky, we showed some of those posts earlier. Bless you, because I have no time or patience for any of them over there. But Mike Howell, thanks so much for joining us today. We always appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on.
When we come back, we'll have another final look at how Charlie Kirk will be remembered by you and the audience next. Well, today, the question was simple. I just asked you on X, how will you remember Charlie Kirk? Let's go ahead and get right to your replies. The great American explorer wrote that one of the best Americans of my generation, and he did so much to reach out to the other side and make peace. He was a good-hearted person who dedicated his life to the American people and loved everyone, and obviously a good Christian man, father, and husband. And I definitely wanted to start it off with that reply, Matt, because that encapsulates so much of the Charlie that we know.
Yeah, and I mean, I think this is the silver lining in these tragic days is this inspiring figure who, when you look at his life, suddenly cut short in front of all of us. You see all these true, good, and beautiful things, and people are latching onto that, and that's a wonderful thing.
Michael wrote that he will remember Charlie Kirk as a brilliant young man that built an incredible organization to show true conservatism and godliness based on his faith in Jesus Christ. And of course, like many of you, I was watching a lot of the content that came up on social media from Charlie yesterday, people posting several old videos, and one of them came up and he said he was asked how he wanted to be remembered. And he was just saying his faith in Jesus, that is absolutely the one thing that if he could say, what is the one thing that I want to be known for above all else, that was it.
We were talking about this with some of the writing team today and the editors, and the faith dimension of this that's kind of pouring out is truly incredible. And you can't extricate what Charlie built, from his faith. And that's a testament to how he was a witness. And as someone reminded me today, that's what the word martyr means. It means someone who witnesses, and that's what he did.
And Dirk rounds out our replies. He wrote, by being the best that I can, not getting angry, moving forward with a renewed purpose, and learning enough to answer questions and teach as well as Charlie did. And you just look at the impact that he had on all the young people across the country and the way that he loved going across the college campuses. And he just wanted to be there with a microphone and just engaging with everybody that he could.
Yeah, and that engagement is has led to a movement. It's created a movement. It helped push a movement forward of young people who were dedicated to saving their country, who were civic minded. I remember, I'm old enough to remember when that was supposed to be good on both sides, right or left, as civic engagement was supposed to be a good thing. And here's someone who went out and engaged people about political questions and cultural questions. I thought dialogue was supposed to be a good thing. I thought that we were all supposed to talk it out and argue it out in the marketplace of ideas. This is what I thought. This is what I was told. And that's what Charlie, in fact, went out and did. And in so doing, he made a bunch of people, millions of people, young people, civically active. And for that, he was slaughtered in broad daylight. But that is something that's inherently good. And you do see people, some people on both sides of the spectrum acknowledge that. And that has been a good thing. There's been a few people who have come out that have surprised me, that have said, hey, I may have disagreed with his politics, but he actually did that. And that's heartening. But what's not heartening, and what's not going to be what's the obstacle for this entire generation is, as I said earlier, it's not that they're radicalized, it's that they see the reality of the situation. And the reality of the situation, Jill, is that we live in a highly divided country where there have been irresponsible people and evil actors operating for a long time who either tacitly or explicitly sanction violence. And they're going to have to stop that as they grow older.
And this is now, sadly, the second show that we have done on the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And even though we're here, even though we have been processing this news, it still doesn't feel real. It doesn't even matter how often we have been talking about this here at Blaze headquarters with friends and family. It still just doesn't seem real.
Yeah, let's just be clear to our audience. Walk in today and there's clearly, extra security measures being taken here, as there are throughout the country at many conservative media outlets and other places that would be possibly threatened by other copycat actors. That's a harsh reality, a reality I fully accept. I was here early, eager, but the change is what is hard to imagine, right? And today I felt like was a day of heaviness and a sort of weight and hollowness that I think a lot of people felt, regardless of how they knew Charlie. It doesn't matter whether you listen to his podcasts or knew him otherwise. And you could feel that weight and that hollowness today. Another friend said it was like staring out at just the empty gray ocean, and not a lot to say. And I felt that today. And we get paid to write and edit words. If I wasn't being paid to do this, I wouldn't want to talk for 24 hours, 48 hours about it at all. But here we are, and everyone's still processing, and there's a certain unpredictability to this where, what do we take away from this? How do we move forward? And that's what we're wrestling with now.
And we just look at Charlie and the impact that he had, not only just with his faith in the political movement, and he has J.D. Vance, the vice president of the country, that has flown out to Utah, took Air Force Two out there, met with Erica and the kids, and is actually going to be flying Charlie Kirk's remains back to Arizona with the family. And JD wrote a beautiful post on X yesterday, and just, you see when you get to these levels, some of these relationships are fake, but with Charlie, there was nothing fake.
Yes, and that includes his relationship with President Trump as his longtime producer and helper. Andrew Colbert said this morning he went on air very bravely, executive producer for Charlie, and has helped him with everything and by his side all the time. And he said this about his relationship with Trump, like this wasn't fake, and same with his relationship with JD. And I guess for myself today, I am cynical. I've long predicted this sort of thing was going to happen. You could see it rising. So a certain part of me isn't surprised. And if anything, I have a tendency, like a lot of in the audience, we had a lot of grief yesterday. We're still mourning, but at the same time, the anger has started to rise within me as I think about how this was allowed to happen and what caused it. And in order to calm myself down and channel that anger, I was thinking today, I sent a note to a friend. I was thinking today about what I should be doing during this time. And I thought, I need to pray more and let my faith shine out in my own life, in my public life, like Charlie did. I thought, I know that I need to stay humble, just like Charlie did. And I know that I need to be less cynical and more positive and productive like Charlie was. I need to be more like Charlie. And meditating on that was very helpful today to prevent the anger and to channel it, channel the grief into something meaningful. And I think that a lot of people are doing that out there today. And I'd encourage people, there will be time to do that in the next few days. There'll be time for anger. There's going to be time for justice. We're going to hold a lot of people accountable. And in fact, the entire Trump presidency will now be judged on whether those people are held accountable. And I think President Trump knows that. But in the meantime, there's a lot of retrospection that we could all do during this time to be more like Charlie.
That is beautifully said, Matt. And I want to just highlight the last post that Charlie had on X, where he said, if we want things to change, it's 100% necessary to politicize the senseless murder of Irina Zarutska, because it was politics that allowed a savage monster with 14 priors to be free on the streets to kill her. I almost can't believe that those were the last words that we will get from Charlie. Yeah. In this particular setting. But if you want things to change, it's 100% necessary to politicize senseless murder.
Yes.
It is clear as day. There is no misinterpreting this. We need to move forward and become leaders and build structures the way that Charlie was able to do it, because he was able to do it better than most anyone. That's why he was the one at the head of Turning Point USA, but is now on everybody else in the movement to take that.
Yes, and the murder of this innocent Ukrainian girl, really started the week, right? People were outraged about what happened, and we weren't supposed to talk about that. And then we see Charlie Kirk slaughtered in broad daylight in front of the entire nation. And, I'll be damned. Everyone's going to talk about that. And we're now at a boiling point, yes. But this is about, it is political. We don't have to politicize it. It was a political assassination. And we all know that. And so the next steps are indeed about justice, and justice is coming. Justice is coming to whoever committed this atrocious act. Justice is coming to all the people who have dined out on irresponsible rhetoric, who have funded groups that fund riots, that fund violence. We have had enough of this in America, and I say it quietly to you now, but you're going to hear it loudly over the course of the next few months.
And there were a lot of tears shed here at Blaze headquarters yesterday. I know nobody slept well last night, and this is going to be something that will take a lot of time to still just process and move on. But we will try to honor Charlie the absolute best way that we can and try to continue his legacy, what he was building, and not only just the political aspect, but as Matt said, with the faith aspect as well, because that's what Charlie wanted to be remembered by. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you back here tomorrow.